Hello everyone, this is General Hand Grenade. Welcome to my war room in Prince George, British Columbia. This is the last video in the 3-video series of my first game of Global War 1936 to 1945. The first video was a pre-war video. It went from July of 1936 to July of 1939. And then the second video was early war years. It was July of 1939 to July of 1942. And this video will take us from July 1942 to the end of the war in July 1945. So this one will be one turn longer than the other videos. The other ones were 6 and this one is 7. Before I get down to, I haven't made any moves yet. It's been a couple of days since I published the last video. I've been busy with other things, and also I've been reading comments on what I've done so far, because I'm trying to learn this game, and I understand that without somebody else here, pointing out, hey, I don't think that's right, what I'm relying on is people to help me out in the comment sections. And one person was saying about Italy. I was talking a lot about Italy and how it seems kind of silly that they can go through the whole game without being at war, and they can actually go through the whole game without being at war, but not the way I was doing it though. You see, I'll take you through the rules as well and show you what I mean, but Italy can go through the whole game without being at war with anybody. The only places they can go other than Italy though, other than their own territories, is Albania right here, which they haven't done, or Abyssinia here, and I'll show you why. But we'll get to that in a second. Let's just move over here. Okay, let's take a look at this. Is the Italy card, okay? And so I will show you where I went wrong. Okay, so Italy, the war status is at peace with all nations, free to declare war. Okay, that doesn't get to it. Annexation says Italy may annex Albania by moving into that country. This should have been my hint here. This requires no declaration of war. Okay, then Abyssinia, that was Albania. Abyssinia, in 1936, Italy is already at war with Abyssinia and does not have to declare war on that country, and thus does not trigger a British-French income increase. Okay, so that's the Italy card. So this is the British card here. We take a look up at the top here. So as far as who Britain can declare war on, when it says the Axis, Britain, yes, they can declare war on Axis power. Once Britain reaches full production, it can't declare war on an Axis power that has not yet declared war on another nation during the game. I read that to mean another power, but it doesn't say another power, it says another nation. And clearly after reading the other ones there, a nation is anything, right? This is a nation right here. This is a nation. So I was, just any country is a nation. This is a nation. I was thinking, okay, if Italy declared war on Britain or France, then Britain could declare war on them. But that wasn't it. It's any nation. And so that's the British card. Okay, the last thing I want to show you is, let me just set this one down. Declaring war. Declaring war is initiating war, meaning that the player declaring it is starting the war. Players may sometimes declare war in response to being attacked, but this is not technically a declaration of war. That doesn't matter. But anyway, that declaring war is initiating war, and I'll show you what I did. And then, here, look at major power and minor power there. So there's major power and there's minor power. Look at minor power. A nation that is not a major power is a minor power. Okay, that's pretty simple, right? So the major powers in the game are the ones that have cards, right? Like Italy and Japan and Germany and the US and Britain and France and Russia. And those are the only major powers. So everybody else is a minor power. So initiating a war with them is a declaration of war, which means that Britain, once it reaches its full income, which it has a while ago, could declare war on Italy. Like they could declare war on Japan if they want, and they didn't really want to this point. And they could declare war on Germany, but they could also declare war on Italy. And the reason for that is, let me just get a little bit closer in here, that a couple of turns ago, Italy, because I had the rules wrong, Italy went and declared war on Yugoslavia. And then after that, they declared war on Greece. And they were about to declare war on Turkey, but now they're going to have to rethink that. Britain can declare war on them, although Britain was waiting for Italy to declare war on them, so they're not really set up to attack the Italians right now, are they? Anywhere. Like they were kind of baiting them into attacking them just to get them into the war. So Britain is not in a position at this time to declare war on Italy, maybe 2 turns from now. Like if they take a turn to build up and to move their navy closer, then maybe they can declare war on Italy. But anyway, I had that wrong, and I apologize to you if I was leading you down the wrong path. And I thank everybody who comments on my videos and points out rules that I might be getting wrong, because this is how I'm going to learn the game. That and reading the rules, trying to read them properly. But anyway, I went back and I tried to read all the rules. Like when you read the rules before you get the game, and this is true for any game, I think, it doesn't necessarily make complete sense to you. Like it makes, for the most part, sense. I've been playing Axis and Allies for, 30-something years, right? So a lot of it made sense to me, especially the game mechanics, but the nuances of the political situation, that's a bit of a different story until you start playing the game. It's hard to wrap your head around things like that. So I went back and I reread the rule book, not all of it, I mean a lot of it, oh okay I know that, oh okay I know that, but all the stuff, oh let's look at this, maybe I didn't read this close enough. So I read a lot of things, and one of the other things I discovered that I was doing wrong, up there, when Germany took out Belgium there, that meant that the Belgian Congo should have went to like any. I should have brought the rule up, but anyway, when you attack a power or a country, then all of its colonies go to the other side, right? Are aligned to the other side. And if you look at the alignment conditions, as far as when the Axis attack somebody, then they align to Britain, except in the case of Mongolia. I think that's it. There might be another one. Obviously communist China. But anyway, so this would go to the Allies, which would go to Britain, because Britain is the one that it's supposed to go to, right? So Belgian Congo, because it's part of Belgium, it's a colony of Belgium, should have gone to them a long time ago. So I counted back, and there was 6 turns, and I thought it would be kind of unfair to give them $6, right? So what I did in lieu of that was I took 3 tech rolls, because I thought, that would be a little more fair. It's not like it's an immediate $6 that I'm slapping on to attack the Italians now, right? But anyway, 3 tech rolls. So I did the 3 rolls. 2 of them missed, and 1 of them hit, and that was on wartime economy. So the British wartime economy has moved up 1 space. They only need 1 more. And that's how I rectified that situation. The other rectifying this situation is, well, like there's no guarantee that Britain would have declared war on them anyway, right? They were kind of doing their own thing. Like it's not necessarily a bad thing. If Italy wants to sit there like a bump on a log, then Britain can just keep, or the UK can just keep shucking troops over to the FEC, right? So now they're going to have to worry, because they know that Italy is not safe. They're not safe from being attacked. So Italy might be a little more aggressive because of that. And they don't necessarily want Italy going and taking over Turkey anyway, right? So, but really, when you read it, though, what would happen if Italy went and took Istanbul, then then Britain declared war on Italy at that point, then that would mean that these things would be British, wouldn't it? All these troops here, so Britain would get an extra IPC. It wouldn't be control because, like, it would be control as soon as Italy did it, because Britain is not at war with Italy. But once Britain is at war with Italy, then they align, not control. And we'll get into that when I do rules videos. But that would mean that these guys would be British, and they're not really British. But I put British units on the board because it's easier to see that way. That oh, you get to use this now. You know, it's fully incorporated into your army. It's not just, I mean, you could just use those pieces, but then there's so many different neutrals on the board that it'd be hard to keep them straight in your head, which you can use, which you can't use, and all that, right? So it's just easier to take those ones off the board and replace them with British. So Italy's going to have to think twice about attacking Istanbul now, and think twice about whether or not they want to go down, like these guys are kind of open now. Like Italy technically could come down there and get them. So we'll see. We'll see what's going to happen. But I'm just thankful that people are more knowledgeable in this game than I am, and I will get there. I'm planning on becoming a very good player at this game over time, and so I'm committed to learning the rules. I found that I became a better Global 40 player after I got a YouTube channel, and people kept asking me questions like I was a rules expert or something. What that did was it forced me to keep going to either tell people to screw off or keep going to the rule book. So I went back to the rule book so many times that I got to know where everything was in the rule book. And when you're scouring for one particular rule, that means you're reading a whole bunch of stuff, right? And so I read that rule book about a million times, and I became very good at the Global 40 rules. And that's what I'm hoping will happen with this game as well. So thank you for helping me out with that. And let's just stop this part of the video, and I will take the German turn, and we'll continue with this war. Okay, so it's after the Germans' turn, so I've only taken one turn right now. I haven't taken a whole round. But I thought you might want to take a look at the Eastern Front before the Russians go in. It changes dramatically, and then it's hard to imagine what it looked like after the German turn. I'm not sure if I did the right thing. Like, I'll find out, right? But what I did was I did as much as I could. Like, there was a lot of Russian units here, and so I was able to take them out. And then in an effort to save my tanks, I also blitzed into this place back here. And I lost a tank and a mech, but I was able to take that city and take 4 units over there as well. But the problem I think I might have done there is, in order to do that, I had to land my tactical bombers here, because they attacked here, and then the only place they could land was here. But you see there's 4 mechs here, 4 mechanized infantry that can come over here. There's nothing in the way, and they could use a plane or two in there as well, right? And then they've got units that can come over here. They've got units that can come here. They've got a tank and a couple of mechs here. They can go here and then blitz to get these 2 tanks, and they're going to have to do something like that, because if they don't, I mean, you look at this, these guys could move up if they wanted to, but like the tanks can just go right down into the oil country down there where there's tons of stuff. So they're going to have to. You see this airborne guy here. He came from France. That's what long-range aircraft will do for you. But so he had to land back here, right? But they got to watch that guy too, because he can fly into the Middle East as well, right? So anyway, I kind of thought that it did not look so good for the Germans before I'd taken this turn. But the way it turned out, it's just, you know, it's a matter of adjusting your mindset to the new mechanics of this game compared to Global 40. Like and specifically the blitzing in this game and the railroads, because there was nobody near the front here. It was all bare back here, right? But like these 2 guys were able to rail from Western Europe, and these 2 guys were able to rail from Western Germany. Well, there's 3 guys there. Like, 1 guy moved up and 2 guys railed from back there, and then these 2 guys railed to here, And then these guys, like they all move 2 spaces. The ones that move 2 spaces, I moved 2 spaces, and the ones that move 1 space, I railed up there, right? They originally wanted to go to here, but actually no, here. But then I realized, oh, the planes. So I had to move them back to protect the planes rather than the tanks, right? Anyway, because yeah, I didn't look over here and see these mechs, so that's the one big mistake they did though is they got a little too greedy and they went after the Russian boats, and like they brought the fighters in. So the fighters would like to be up at the front here as well, right? But they can't because they're going to have to be at an air base in order to scramble against these things here. They're going to go after the damaged German battleship. The Germans just didn't roll very well, like, and the Russians did roll well. There was only 1 round of combat, but that's what happened. The Germans lost their destroyer, and the battleship got damaged. I didn't want to lose a plane. And then the Russians, they lost a destroyer and a sub. So the Germans were hoping for more success than that, but didn't happen. Yeah. So anyway, I thought I'd show you what the Eastern Front looks like before I take the Russian turn and it all changes again. Okay, so I already showed you the Germans and what they did on their turn. They did nothing on the Western Front. I don't know if I showed you the Western Front, but I did show you the Eastern Front. But yeah, nothing happened on the Western Front whatsoever. So the Russians, let me just take a look here. Okay, the Russians. Yeah, as I was talking about, they did come over here with they had 1 mech left. They did have to bring a couple of planes in. They made sure to bring the fighter because the fighter, in his first hit, got to take off a tactical bomber, right? If I'd had used either other planes, then they would have taken a dude off instead with that hit. But the fighter took a tactical bomber on the first hit, and then it was a tough fight. Like they barely got this territory here. They didn't lose any planes though in any of their attacks, so they were able to take these tanks out pretty handily here. They moved some things over to here and resupplied. You can see Moscow doesn't have nearly as much stuff on it anymore, right? Now, one of the things that did not go according to what they would have liked, there was a tank and a mech that came in here, right? And they blitzed over to here, but unfortunately the Russians did not have any more air support. So there was two German tanks here, and they managed to defeat the Russian tank and the Russian mech, although they did get 1 off them. But the problem now is that the Germans can gang up on this territory here, and then that tank can blitz through, right, into northern Caucasia if they want. So that's no good. Plus they've got an airborne here, and they've got a transport plane. So they could fly that guy pretty much just about anywhere around there, right? That can get them in behind the lines. This guy railed all the way over from Siberia. Actually, both of these guys did, because there was nobody to resupply that. That was an oversight on my part. I'm still learning the mechanics of this game, right? I'm starting to get it, but man, reading the rules and trying to understand it, and then actually putting the pieces down on the board and playing it is completely different. You learn so much more when you're playing it, and this is really why I was saying at the beginning of this series that I really wanted to play a game before I made any how-to videos, so that I would understand, not just be able to read it to you and do some example, but to try to understand and maybe come up with some more examples, because not everything is as cut and dry as attacking the territory next to you, right? The Russians don't have much factory capacity because they destroyed those 2 factories, right? So they're only able to place 11 units besides militia, and that's what I did. I placed 11 units. I didn't buy any militia, but that's what it looks like over here. Now the Japanese, they really wanted to declare war this turn, but I don't think I've played the Japanese very well. I can
see that for sure. Like what I wasn't doing I was concentrating too much on the Chinese, which they did a good job. They wiped them out and everything. But what I didn't do was set myself up to attack the Western allies, like the Americans or the British or whoever, right? So now I'm set up, but like I would have liked to have been set up and gone on this turn. But I just wasn't, like I stared at it for like an hour, and I looked around and did this and did that, and there was just no way. What I would have liked to have done was come over here and to get these boats. There was a British Navy in there, if you remember, and there was a British Navy in there that I could have reached as well. But the problem is that there was other British Navy around, so you can only do one space. If I'd attacked one, then they would have came over and they would have killed my Japanese battleships on their turn, right? So that wasn't going to be a good idea. So this Navy now, this one right here, is just enormous, and it's got lots of transport capacity. Plus we've got destroyers up here that can transport infantry class units. That's why I placed a Marine here and a Marine here. Normally you wouldn't need to place them on the mainland, but they placed them there because they wanted to pick them up and take them. So like you look at the size of this Navy here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 transports, there's a couple of destroyers in there, there's a cruiser, 3 aircraft carriers, 3 battleships, a light cruiser, or sorry, a light carrier, and this chip underneath here means that that fighter is a veteran fighter. There's also a sub there. And then these guys over here, these are the guys that are on, oh, I forgot to place this thing. So these guys are on Formosa here, right there. So now they're ready to go. Like I've put everything in place. Now they can hit Calcutta from here, from that Navy. That's probably what they'll do on their first strike, is they'll strike Calcutta. And while they're doing that, they've got these guys here that can go down here and they can go into Burma. There's these boats up here, those destroyers, which can come down into here. And these boats here, there's a couple transports there with some Marines and everything. They can come to the Philippines. And let me see, 1, 2, 1, 2. I thought they could come down. I guess not. 1, 2, 3. Oh, yeah, they can come down to Malay here and to here. These guys will probably try to reach down here though, or here. One of the two. You know what I mean? And oops, I'm not showing you. Either here or here. They're going to do what they can anyway. And so that's the Japanese. I wish I could have been this set up on the last turn though. Funny thing though, the Americans only rolled a 3, so so they're still only at 60. They still aren't able to declare war over there. They're still only at 60. Okay, so after that, it was the British turn. The Anzac didn't do anything because they can see the coming war, and they only had 4 IPCs, so they saved theirs, so they got 8 IPCs now. These guys here, the FEC, they built this guy here because they want to be able to utilize the bunker and the coastal gun better. If there's just a couple of militia there, then Japan would have wiped them out easy, right? But when you put a little bit more there, then you've got more shots at their stuff. Because these things are basically free shots, right? Well, they're not free shots, but you know, you want to be able to utilize them, right? And they move these guys back and move these guys up. They know that their capital is vulnerable, but it's not that vulnerable. Like they're coming in there, sure, but there's still a lot of stuff there they got to get through. And they decided to save their Navy because it's not just the Japanese they're worried about, right? There's those pesky Italians that they can declare war on, but that they didn't. So we come back here. They've moved their Navy over here. They bought themselves, here, let's move up a bit. They bought themselves a jet fighter, and they moved their fighter over from Gibraltar. So this Navy hasn't changed in here. The Italians could take this Navy out if they wanted to. But what I've done is make it so that they don't want to. Because there's this Navy here, and then there's this Navy over here. So the Italians will lose every boat they have for probably if they decide to attack that British Navy, and at the same time the British can attack their Navy. So what Rome decided to do was recall a lot of troops and put them on Rome, right? Because what have they got there? One, two. Well, I guess they only got 2 transports in the water, the UK, that can hit them from here. But still, you know, like they do have some landing shots if they decide to use them, right? So they needed to stack Rome. You don't want to be losing your capital, right? And they had all this stuff piled on here. They were going to go here. Well, they've decided, no, we're not going to do that. Let's just start pulling back, and that's what they've done. It's time to pull back, and I wish I would have known those rules better to begin with, and I would have done things a little differently for both of them, really. But what I've tried to do is not take advantage of the other one. Like, I'll give each side a turn before I start attacking their navy, right? So the British didn't attack them this time, and they didn't attack the British this time. Next time, though, we'll see what happens. Okay, then the French, they just moved up. And, oh, shoot, I forgot to put I had also, oh, no, I know what I did. I did buy stuff for them. So I bought a militia, so there's 2 militia there now. And I bought a Foreign Legion. That's colonial infantry for the French. So that was all of their money. And there's this German sub, I don't know, I said nothing happened on the Eastern Front. One thing happened for them. They moved this sub down here from here. Like they had lost one of the subs in the convoy raiding last turn or the turn before, I can't remember. But anyway, that French, this thing here was sitting right here. And so he moved down here, and the British had bought a destroyer knowing that, because this thing can go 3 spaces, right? So at least these guys got a fighting chance. Like, this guy still could come down, and he's still got a pretty good shot at taking them both out. But at least they have a destroyer to take a shot back if the sub misses its first strike. And nothing happened up there except for taking a tactical bomber off there and putting it on Gibraltar to replace the fighter that I moved over to Cairo, and bringing the Navy down. I did leave those 3 ships up there, and they are vulnerable. There's those planes over there. Oh, I know what I forgot. The Russian boats there, they came in and took out the battleship, and the sub hit them on the first strike. I think, and then the German fighters had also scrambled, so they took out one of the destroyers. So even though the battleship didn't get a shot, the 2 fighters did. And then the Russians retreated. I think I'm actually supposed to submerge that sub. I'll take a quick look at that. And if that's the case, then the Russian cruiser goes back there, and the sub stays in the zone where the fight was. I think that's what I'm supposed to do. I guess I was just retreating everybody, you know what I mean? But I don't think that's the way it goes. And I told you what the Italians did. Okay, the Americans, they're finding that they're lacking in factory space now, so I think next turn they're going to have to buy some more factories, or start buying more factories, because they're getting up there in money, and it's hard to fit their stuff on. For the first time, I've had to use I put the battleship here, and I put a fighter over here. I put as much stuff as I could over here. I think there was an extra transport I put in, plus everybody that I need. And then there was a couple boats that were down here. They've been down here all game. I moved those up to get ready to go. And over here, again, put more stuff on. Actually, no more warships though. What I did was I put 2 transports on, and I think I got enough guys to transport everybody. Oh, you know what I didn't do? I meant to do that. Let's do that while I'm on camera. This is the last thing that I did, was the Americans, right? So I'll just finish their turn off. Now, I know that the Japanese aren't going to use their first strike here. Well, I guess this thing has to go here. You can only go 1 space. I know that the Japanese can't use their first strike over here because there's nobody anywhere near there, right? So I don't mind putting all of these in 1 space now. And that's what I've done. Oh, over here, I moved this up 1, and I placed one, I purchased one of these. aircraft carrier. But that's an Iowa class battleship. So that's one of the heavy battleships for them. And let me just take a look around, see if I missed anything. Nothing happened in Spain. You know what? I kind of lost interest in Spain. I'm gonna have to play for sure next time with the Spanish Civil War expansion set, because I'm just once the rest of the war gets going, it's just hard to get excited about that, right? It's just such a small battle in here that it doesn't really even matter. Like I even forget. In fact, I forgot to roll for both of those, so I'll do that once I turn the camera off here. I'm going to roll for the Nationalists and roll for the Republicans and see if they get their stuff, because I don't even think about that anymore. But if there were more people here, then somebody would be excited about it, and then, oh, if he's going to do that, then I'm going to do this, So I think that would be a battle. But when you're playing by yourself and you got a million pieces to move, that doesn't seem very important. So anyway, that's the way it looks. And where are we here? We're moving to 1943. I'll be back. Well, it's January of 1943, and Germany has dealt the Allies a major blow. See here, they took this transport plane here. Which one? Here it is. Transport plane there on Romania. Picked up their airborne, flew them over, landed them on Transcaucasia, and brought the medium bomber in as well. Just in case, like they would have lost the medium bomber if they had taken a casualty there. But it turned out that the airborne actually hit the guy. First shot, he hit him with a 1. So taking Transcaucasia meant that Germany got Turkey as well. Now, I don't know if you're supposed to change the color of all these guys, but I do, because it's the same thing, right? You get all that territory, you get their money, you get to move their units with yours and everything. So you might as well just replace them with yours. Not only do they get all that, but they get a minor factory down here in the Mediterranean. So we'll see what happens now. They did falter in one respect, though. Like they were going to this place here, and they wanted to blitz to here, to North Caucasia. But it took them 4 rounds to take that over, because they had no air support. That medium bomber had to go to Transcaucasia instead, right? So they only had a mech and a tank against, or sorry, I think they had 2 tanks against a mech and a tank, and it took them 4 rounds to take them out. And you can only blitz if you've taken them out in 3 or less. So this tank wasn't allowed to go here, right? But that's the only way they faltered on that turn. There wasn't much else that they did over there, just moving their stuff up to the front lines. The other big development is over here, where they finally have taken out the Netherlands. Also they were able to get advanced artillery. And now that they rolled for advanced artillery and got that. Now that they're able to, it's 1943, they're able to build SS Panzer Grenadiers. And this is what I'm using for SS Panzer Grenadiers. These were my SS that I used in my Axis and Allies game. So they're on an SS chip. That's a mechanized infantry, but I'm just using, I like that, I really like that sculpted. So you're allowed to build 2 of those per turn, and you don't even need advanced mechanized infantry. So I built 1 here and built 1 here, and they're pretty powerful. I think they're attack 4 and defense 5 and movement 2. So, and it only costs $4. So yeah, Germany's got Russia on the ropes right now. We'll have to see what the Russians do. The only other thing that happened over there was the German sub went down to South Africa. There was a British destroyer and a French transport, and the sub and the destroyer both hit in the first round, so the transport was saved. But Germany, now the only sub they have in the water is that coastal sub. They spent all their money on ground troops, and you can see like they're doing really well in the ground war. They're not doing dick in the Atlantic though. Like the Americans are coming in this turn, and we'll see. Like the Stalin's just begging for them to open up the Western Front, and if they don't, then this game is over, right? So it's playing out just like the war did, I think. You know, like Germany's making big advances into the Eastern Front, and there's an Atlantic wall there, and now it's time for the Western Allies to punch through it. So we'll be back. Well, the Russians were able to have some success. I mean, the attacks that they did were for the most part successful. One of them failed, but the other ones were successful. So they managed to take this one here and this one here. This was all yesterday, so I'm trying to remember. Okay. I only get about an hour and a half to play this per day while I'm working, because I've got other things to do. And they were able to come down here and take this, and they railed up as much as they could, and they've moved stuff up. Like from this factory here, it's only 2 spaces to get to here, right? So that guy doesn't even need to rail. And the same with this thing here, and he also moved up the same way. But as you can see, they weren't able to reach Transcaucasia here, and Germany is still fully in possession of Turkey. Nobody was able to do anything about that. We'll get around there though. I'll show you. So Russia doesn't look too bad, but you know, like, I mean, you could say, well, the Germans were going to do some damage, right? And it was just Russia against Germany to this point, and it's going to change. I don't know if it'll change on the next turn or the turn after, but one way or another, Germany's just going to have to watch the back door now, because you look here, there's the Americans. They finally entered the war, and this is the stuff they have there. So on their transports, they have 4 transports with 8 things on them. So that's what the Americans or that's what the Germans are looking at coming towards them. And I haven't played this game before. I've said that a number of times, but it's going to take me a while to figure out how to do that. You know what I mean? Like I knew in Global 40, okay, you go to C Zone 91 and then there was an air base or naval base there, and then you come, you know, I'm gonna have to figure out the best way to attack across the Atlantic and the Pacific for that matter, right? So that's what's happened. That's what's happening over here in the Eastern Front and on Germany's back door there. Over here, the Russians have moved in. They rather than going too hard at it, they're going to take it slowly. This is what the Japanese have over against the Russians. And again, the Japanese aren't going to have too much coming up, because the Americans, again, they decided to take, what is that under there, the Marshall Islands? I can't read it anymore. Anyway, that's Americans now. So I'm really not happy with the way that I played the Japanese though. I mean, you look at this and, you know, if this was 2 turns ago, that would be okay. I think what it was I was too tentative with the Axis. I mean, I didn't manage to keep the Americans out of the war until 1943, but is that a good thing? You know, like it's taken this long for them to get down here, and now, you know, the Americans, they can be in Japan in 2 turns. So these guys, like, there's no naval base here. They can make it here, and then they can make it back, right? Like they can make it to this naval base, and then they can make it back. So I don't know. It's I think I could have played the Japanese better for sure. And you know, with their surprise strike, I wasn't really able to use it. The Dutch actually put up a hell of a fight. Like, you look at here, they attacked this space on the British and took it. This was the Dutch space, and this was the Dutch space. So there's still a Dutch guy left here. This one, everybody died, and the Dutch kept control of it, and this guy retained this one here. This one was just a walk-on over here. So they didn't actually defeat any Dutch islands. The only thing they could use their surprise strike for was this space right here where the boats are, which was no big deal, right? Like, they really wanted to go in here, but they could not get their planes in there. Their planes were, that would have been 4 spaces to get there with their planes. And then of course that's illegal because they wouldn't have been able to land, right? If they had one more space, then that's where they would have gone for sure, because their planes would have had that first strike capability, and that would have made it worth it. But it just, you know, like with the amount of land troops, I think they had 8 land troops that could have gone in there. With only 8 land troops against that big stack there and no planes, it was not a good attack for them. What's going on down here? These guys did nothing, but they're getting more money because I did not want to give the money to Calcutta, like the money that you get for the Dutch Islands, and the UK doesn't really need it. They're holding their own over there. So I gave the money to these guys. Plus, one thing I forgot to mention, starting last turn, they developed that wartime economy technology. So they get to roll 2 6-sided dice every turn. So this turn they also got a bunch of money. So they've got 18 IPCs, the Aussies do. And so they've got enough money to start actually building something worthwhile, right? Unless the Japanese decide to come down here. I mean, they're certainly within striking distance, aren't they? I mean, they could wipe them right out. But the problem is the Americans sitting right here. And that's that big chunk here. Let me get up nice and close for you there so you can see it. So what do we have in here? We've got an Iowa-class battleship. We've got 2 battleships, a couple of fully loaded aircraft carriers, 1, 2, 3, 3 cruisers, 1, 2, 3 destroyers, 3 submarines, 3 transports. Yeah, so the Japanese, like the kicker is the 3 transports that are fully loaded, right? They can actually take something over, right? Because that's 6 ground troops. I mean, they don't pile enough guys on Japan. They could actually take Japan out, right? Anyway, so Calcutta survives, and they might survive now this game because of what's happened. Like the Japanese are going to have to start making their way back. What I would do maybe is take this guy out and take this out on my way back, and maybe Malay, right? We'll see what happens. Okay, so then the British went, and what did they do? I told you about that fight that was down here, where the destroyer and the submarine hit each other, and so that allowed this French transport to escape. So this was quite the little battle here. The British attacked here. Remember, there was a big stack of Italian units there, and it was overwhelming odds for the British, right? Like they brought in everything they could, and you know, like they did really well. And they even had a couple of battleships and 3 cruisers that they actually 2 cruisers. Because they only had 2 transports. So they brought a couple of guys over on transports and everything too. And none of the, actually one of the cruisers hit their landing shot. So that was 1 Italian. And then all that air power too. So the British were able to hit them pretty hard in the first round. But then the Italians rolled 5 hits in the first round. So that's why you see only 2 tanks up. They didn't get any hits in the second round, but 5 hits in that first round. Like I was, oh my God, are they even going to take it? You know. Otherwise, the British would be much stronger down there than what they are. And as you can see here, the French, they came down and took that 1 lone guy out because they needed the money. They were down to 4, so now they're back up to 5. So yeah, Africa is pretty secure now, and the navies here, like you see the airbase, this will be fully functional next turn. That's you see they've got 3 fighters here, a jet fighter and 2 regular fighters. That's going to make their navy totally secure. Like it's already about even, maybe, no, it's stronger. That's right, I forgot about the aircraft carriers. So the aircraft carriers in there make this stronger than the Italian Navy. So there's no way the Italian Navy is going to attack that. They looked at it and there's just no way. Even with the 4 planes they've got, they just can't do it. And now with this airbase going on, that's going to take it right out of the equation for sure for the Italians. So what they've started doing is, you can take a look in there, they're building right up in there. They're building lots of ground forces. Like, it's going to be tough to take out that peninsula there. They've still got their holdings over here, so they got the 1 mountain troop in Greece, and they've got the guys over here in Yugoslavia. But they're pretty built up in here. I mean, it looks like it, but if you try to attack one space, it's not that built up. Like, there's only a dude, a black shirt, and a cannon right here, right? So you could take one of them out. But the thing about that is that they can also take it back, right? And that goes true for anywhere. I try to build up Rome a little better than the rest of them. And also we've got these 3 fighters here. They're on an airbase. That's the only airbase the Italians have over there. So they can scramble into the fight if the British decide to attack this fleet here. So they're going to have to attack the fleet before they can attack the land. Although they can come around and just attack this small fleet here. But depending on what they bring in, they can bring those in. They can bring the fighters in there, right? Okay, so what else? The British fleet didn't move over here. Oh, you know what? I forgot to take this off. There are no subs over here anymore, so... Yeah, the Germans didn't put too much stock into buying boats, that's for sure. Absolutely nothing happened in Spain, as I told you last turn. You know, I think I'm just going to give up on Spain and just call it a draw there, because I'm just so engrossed in trying to learn the game and trying to learn how to play everybody else that I don't really care about Spain. So I am going to care about it in the future, just not for the rest of this game. It was good in it taught me, you know, well, like, it helped me practice the mechanics of combat and everything, but I just like to leave it for now and just let the fight go on everywhere else. Okay, so the Americans there, I showed you that, and I showed you what's in there. So what they did on their turn, on the first turn that the American goes to war with a major power, they can buy ground units for 1 IPC cheaper. So all they tried to do this turn was to develop technology. I think they took 5 rolls, and they managed to get advanced subs and jet aircraft, but they missed 3 other rolls. I don't mean they got it, I mean they got the first pie on there, right? But it's still, it's kind of late to be developing technology anyway. By the time it gets to the end, then you're done. But so anyway, what they did was they bought all ground troops. They really wanted to buy, finally, a heavy bomber, and they had it was out of the box, it was sitting on the table and everything, but I thought, you know what, I should just buy all these ground troops while I can, right, while they're cheap. And so that's all they did. They bought a shit ton of ground troops here, and also on the other side. Plus they moved their aircraft over there. They were around. And here's where even though there's no transports yet, I'm just buying them now, and I'll buy the boats on the next turn. The only other thing they did other than ground troops is move these each up 1. So the Iowa class battleship and the aircraft carrier. And I guess the French guys, they were all down here, and they've kind of moved up a bit. I think I'm going to get the French up here as much as possible, since there's nobody threatening them down here, right? The only thing that could happen is the Japanese could come over, but I mean, what's to stop them from doing that anyway? If they want to do that, then it's probably giving up their homeland to do that anyway, with the Americans coming over with those transports and everything. So they're going to try to bring everybody around the desert there, and probably just congregate up in this area up here where they've got a naval base and an air base. Not that those bases are doing them any good. Anyway, that's what it looks like here in... Where are we going here? We are going to July of 1943. See you then. Okay, back again in, what are we in? July of 1943. I tell you, things could certainly be looking better for the Axis. Germany, they ran out of steam here. This is a learning game for me for sure, learning how to play the game and everything. It's difficult to formulate strategies for all these different nations at once, right? I would certainly, now that I've played the game once, I would, or haven't finished, but now that am playing the game once, I would certainly do some things differently. Like you can see here, Germany's running out of steam, and you know, I guess it's like the war. You know, I said that earlier in the video. Germany came out, they looked like Russia was in real trouble, but then now I'm realizing that probably what Germany should have done was build more factory capacity near the front here, right? Like another minor factory on Romania, maybe. It's just they're able to rail units to the front, but that's on non-combat. So, you know, they're running out of units really. They did well when they went down there and took Turkey. Like that was a really good thing that they did there. And then they took the horse from over here and they took here. They will get a bonus if they're able to take Iran down there. But that's no gimme either, because that guy would roll back at 4, and the horse what would he roll? He would roll at 2 because he's going into a mountain territory. So that's not a gimme, and maybe it's not even a good attack, right? The Russians have come down here, so like these guys are in trouble over here. So yeah, the Russians are really doing well, and it didn't help that like Germany, they had a couple of really bad rolls here. Like they had a bad turn in general. The rolls did not go their way. They had a bunch of things here, and they could not take this out. I think they got it down to where there was nothing. Like these are Russian guys that have moved up, but all the units that were there and all the units that were here, between the Russians and the Germans, all the fighting, the Russians won the fighting in the last turn for sure. Nothing changed over here on the Atlantic Wall. When Germany purchased units, they put a lot of them back there, as they have to anyway, because that's where their factories are. But the Americans didn't attack this turn. I kind of thought, like you can see just up to the top of the screen there, that's where their fleet is. And rather than attacking this turn and then having the Germans be able to come back at them and then have the British be able to go in there, what they did was they thought they'd wait and let the British go first on the next turn. So Germany will go next, and then Britain will go, and then America will go. So then they can hit them twice. They can either hit them twice in one territory, or if they're successful on the first attack, if the British are, then the Americans can hit a second territory, right? And the British, they had a pretty good turn too. They rolled and got their improved shipyards. So that means $10 transports, and they bought 3 of them there. So they bought 3 of those, and they bought 3 Royal Marines here. So they've got 6 units plus an airborne unit they can use to go across the water. And they've got quite a few aircraft, as you can see. And the Americans, they can't fly all the way across the water with their smaller aircraft, right? So they stayed here where they were last time. They flew their aircraft off the aircraft carrier onto over here. You can't see the fighter; he's in behind there. But they flew their aircraft over here from the carrier, and then they flew more aircraft onto the carrier. So that was a way they could get them up. Plus they have the medium bomber here. And the Americans, they were finally able to buy the strategic bomber. You remember early in the game there, when we rolled for weapons, the Americans rolled heavy bombers there. So they got a heavy strategic bomber there that can definitely make it over here. So they're about to put a world of hurt on the Germans on the Western Front, or at least open one up. The problem is that there isn't, with the vast distance across the ocean in this game, you can't really get a shot going. I was able to bring a couple of more transports in there, and you can see like there's tons of Marines and elite Marines here. There's a couple of dudes and a couple of artillery, but then in behind that there's nothing. There's no transports or anything. One of the reasons for that, and it's the same on the other side in the Pacific as well, was that I spent a whole turn just buying land units, right? Because they were cheaper for that one turn. Probably what I should have done was saved more money for that turn. But I mean, then you got fewer boats or whatever. So, you know, I don't regret that. It's just you can't shuck like you can in Global 40. It's just too far to go, right? So the Americans have got to they've got one shot, and then they've got to go back and get more. Like they'll build transports on the next turn and come across, but it'll be 2 turns. So the Germans are going to have a 2-turn reprieve. The British are going to keep hammering them, especially with those improved shipyards. They'll buy a couple more transports, and then everything they can to load this up over here. Well, they'll buy as many transports as they can buy units. They've got lots of Air Force. Yeah, so, and they did go down here and take out the German destroyer. They took it out with this and all the planes that they have there. So that's what's happening on the Eastern Front. And on the Western Front, let's move along here. The Japanese are hurting big time. I think I played the Japanese worst out of anybody in this game. I'm just not happy with the way things turned out for them. Like you can see here, they're badly outnumbered in the north here with the Russians. Even with the Russians having to fight the Germans, because they moved their factory back here, that just meant that they had more units over here, and as a consequence, they're actually doing better than the Japanese. And the Japanese now, with the they figured, oh, you know, we'll build some stuff later. Well, later comes now, and the Americans have come across the water, right? So you see here, the Japanese had come over here with a destroyer and a marine, and they took this out. And the Americans, they could have gone for Caroline here, but they thought, you know what, let's just go for this one. They know that everybody here can hit them. All of those boats can hit them from there, just about. But that's what they wanted. They figured, hey, let's get it on. You know, let's just do this. They're going to get right in the middle of it. And they also, they took a place where they knew, okay, even if they were able to take out all the American boats here, the Japanese, there would still be this American force here that would be really difficult to take out when you consider the amphibious assault rules. Not only that, but even if Japan takes it out and has barely anything left here, they did it in a spot where the Anzac here, you can see they've got a couple of subs, they've got a cruiser, and those can hit that spot up there. Plus they've got 2 fighters that can come over here and hit that spot. So they've got 5 units that can go up there and hit this space right here if the Japanese decide to go for it. I haven't even looked at it. I haven't added it all up or anything. But yeah, I think that the Japanese could probably take them out. But it would be awfully close. The Japanese definitely have a little bit more stuff, but then there's the rolling, you know. You know, the Americans do have a couple of carriers here. They do have a couple of battleships, and they've got the Iowa class battleship as well, right? They've got a couple of cruisers, 3 destroyers, 3 submarines, and then in behind here they've just they had a bunch of units down here, but they've just built 4 transports. So they've got enough stuff here to put on 4 transports, and they will probably go down to Marshall here on their turn. So if this fleet survives or doesn't survive, we'll see. And if they don't, or if they do survive, if Japan doesn't go after them, then these guys will either, from here, will either take Caroline, or they will come up here and link up with this fleet, and then they'll have lots of ground troops. They could have gone straight for Japan, but they thought, you know what, I saw this space, and I saw everything that was good about that space, especially the Anzac. That's what really sold me on going here for the Americans, was let's draw Japan down there if they want, and we'll have a big fight. And if it goes pretty well for the Americans, then the Anzac can go in and clean up, and then the Japanese fleet is gone. America is getting what, 74 IPCs, and Japan's only getting 49. So they can outspend them for sure over here, right? Although it is getting late in the war, you know, to do anything. And then over here, like I showed you up north there, how they're not doing so well. Over here they ran out of gas as well. So the British were able to come in and take back Yunnan, and so China has another buck again. Actually, they have two, because the whole road is open, right? So the Chinese are going to get back into the game there if. Actually, they should have gotten something right now, because it's the Americans' turn, and they go on the American. Well, no, they didn't have any money. Yeah, so they collect $2 right now, and the next turn, if they're still around, then they'll get to place something, militia, I guess. But anyway, it's still another thorn in the side of the Japanese. The Japanese were able to take this, and they were able to take Malay here. The British should have put more on there over during the course of the game. I can see how good it is to defend with that coastal artillery and with the fortification, but I only had 2 militia and a colonial infantry on there. I should have had twice that much on there. That would have made it much more difficult for the amphibious assault to take place. The Japanese did do some convoy raiding here, so they took the $3 off of these guys, and the $1 off of France. So they did take 3 off of FEC and 1 off France. FEC spread out a little bit because there just isn't very many enough Japanese units down here to amphibiously assault Calcutta. So they've moved their troops up here to put more pressure on the land over here, since Japan has got too many places, right? Like they've got the islands down here they got to worry about with the American fleet in there. They've got the Russians to worry about. They've got, and these guys said, you know what, let's not sit back anymore. Let's give them a third thing to worry about. That's just too many targets for them, right? It was time to go forward. And then over here in Africa, the British came over here, or came down, and they took out Abyssinia. Although I brought my fighters down, and it's good. It was okay anyway, because the fleet up there is just too big for the Italians to take out. But I thought that I didn't realize it was 1 extra space to get there, so they had to land the fighters here. They wanted to land them back at Cairo, right? But they didn't come down with the jet aircraft, so that one could still scramble. Like they do have an air base there now. France, they just put another colonial infantry on here. And Italy, they can see the writing on the wall. They know that there's nowhere for them to spread their wings out anymore. They're not going to be able to take anybody. So it's time to hunker down, right? So they put a coastal gun, and under construction right now is a bunker. Both of those are going in Rome. So they're going to make it more difficult for the Allies to take Rome. Although if the Allies want to, they can take a different territory and then take Rome from there, which would negate the effects of the coastal artillery, right? But we'll see. I think that they're more interested in going up against the Atlantic Wall down up there than they are at going here. Like they might just hold off rather than take a chance of losing their fleet here against the Italian fleet. If the Italians roll well, just stay like that. Where are the Italians going to go, right? They're not going to be able to do anything against them. The British have more capital ships in there, which is worth a point. I think you need twice as many though, so they might have to attack them at some point in time. And I think that's about it. Oh, South America over here? Absolutely fuck all happened. As you would expect. And nothing happened in Spain. I was talking with Rank Carcass this morning, though, on the phone. Him and I exchanged numbers there, and you might know him from a lot of the posts that he makes, and he's a guy online that plays this game. So he was saying what his thoughts are on Spain and everything, and you know, it's just too late for me to care about that. I'm just learning the game, and so I'm just gonna play the major powers and I'm just going to let that one slide for now. Yeah, it's we're looking at getting together for a game, so that's going to be awesome. That I showed you these things on the wall there. That one straight ahead there, he was the one that made that one up there. So I thank him and everybody else for their efforts on sharing their player aids with all of us. So I'm going to have to go get some lunch into me, and then maybe I'll get another turn in. What happened on the technology board? I showed you the British there, they moved up. The Americans, they moved up one in jet aircraft. The Russians developed heavy armor, so they've got a heavy tank down there in Moscow. And that's about it, I think. I don't think the Germans were able to move up there. Their roles didn't pan out for them. Yeah. So that's what's happening here in Prince George. We're going to move on to January of 1944. We'll be back. So that's it for the first half of 1944, and a lot has happened in this round. Probably the most that's happened in the game so far. I had to get the battle boards out a couple of times there. Big naval battles, but actually on the Eastern Front here, not much happened. Both sides just kind of dug in. There was a couple of skirmishes. I guess probably the most interesting thing that happened was Germany needed to land 2 fighters in Crimea there. I think if you might have seen that last round. So, or maybe you didn't, I guess. So anyway, Germany landed 2 fighters here because of something they were attacking. I can't remember what it was. But anyway, so Russia went in there with their 4 aircraft, and they both lost 2 fighters in that battle. So that's probably the most interesting thing that happened on the Eastern Front. There was a couple of small battles in here. Otherwise, it was mostly just people getting entrenched, right? And down here, they were moving up. This guy went and he took out the German cavalry down here, so they're not going to make it to Iran, at least not yet anyway. Caucasus or Transcaucasia is built up pretty good right now by the Russians. Yeah, so in the north the Russians are stronger, and in the south, well, I guess the Russians, I think, the Russians might even win this game because they're doing pretty damn good here. I'll show you what happened on the Western Front though. That's a different story. Let's get the camera here and set it down. So here, the British took out Normandy, and they just barely got it with one dude there. It's because they got lots of Air Force, right? Those jet fighters are awesome. And plus they got a lot of boats too, right? Like they got a lot of hits with their landing shots. Both the Americans and the British. And the Americans, they didn't actually put up much of a fight down there, the Germans. They were lacking for units down south there. And of course, the Americans have 3 battleships, 3 cruisers and 2 destroyers. They had 8 land units, so they were able to use all 8 of those landing shots. I think they got 3 landing shots. So there was only one unit left, I think. So even though there was a bunker there, they only had 1 unit that got upscaled by 2, plus the bunker shots. So that made short work of the wall there. Now the Americans can push on to Vichy, France here on the next turn, or take Paris back. If they take Vichy, France, then all of the territories that the Vichy had taken from the Free French go back to being Free French, and the boats that are left, the Vichy boats there, those get re-rolled again, and they can either become German, Free French, or scuttled. So that's where we are over there. And then the Americans, they do have two transports and 4 units that they can bring over. So it'll take 2 turns for them to get to Europe over here. And there's only, there's only 3 turns left in the game. So there's not much that can happen. Here's another development here. The Germans developed rockets. after I developed them and I put one on, I looked at the rules and that's it. That's all they do. 1D6 and it costs $8. Like I don't know. They're not going to make their money out of that anyway. That's for sure. I showed you the Eastern Front. Okay, over here in the Russians took out this factory here, so that's a Russian factory now. And the Japanese weren't able to take it back. They didn't try because they were busy going for the Battle of the Pacific there. So yeah, like lots of the Russians still got lots of units here and everything. Though I was looking and I fucked up big time somehow because I was wondering, I was counting up the Japanese money and I thought that can't be right. And so I recounted it and I was off by like $14, $15. I don't know how I did that. It was, I know some of it was bonus for the Chinese. And I think the other one was I didn't actually switch them to their wartime economy. And there's a difference of, I think, 7 IPPs there. So I threw them a bunch of cash anyway. I didn't know what else to do. This is a learning game for me anyway, so but the Japanese weren't doing any good until this last turn. So they put this on here. They've got 2 boats, but look what happened over here. Remember that huge American Navy? Boy, was that ever a bad idea putting them there. I didn't realize that they could hit it with so many things. Like when you're used to Axis and Allies, you're thinking, okay, 2 spaces plus the naval bases make it 3 spaces. But in this game, most of the ships go 3 spaces already. Naval base makes it 4. So just about every Japanese boat in the water was able to reach there. And they rolled really well. The Americans didn't roll quite as well as the Japanese. And so the 3 battleships here are damaged. But there was just no way that that Anzac could have come up here. The only thing other than capital ships that they have here, they've got a cruiser in here, and they've got this light carrier over here. But yeah, there's no way that Anzac could have come there and taken that out. And so the Americans, all they had in the water was the Iowa class battleship, and there's not much time left in the game. So what they had to do was, because they don't want Japan coming across the water destroying their navy, this was almost paid for. So they bought 2 planes, and then they bought 2 destroyers and 2 submarines, because they don't, you can buy those and put them on right away, right? So they've got a bit of navy there, and I don't think that the Japanese would come over right away anyway. It's likely that they would have to go home to where their shipyards are first and repair their capital ships before they went steaming across the Pacific. So I think that's it for the war in the Pacific. I don't know that the Americans are certainly not coming across and picking a fight anymore. They just don't have the time. They've got lots of money, but they don't have the time to come over there and do that. As you've seen in the Atlantic there, probably their money would be better spent going after Germany with this much time left in the game. So nothing else changed down here. I guess, yeah, the British did take out Siam, and they can get Malay back on the next turn, because the Japanese are really hurting on the land. They were able to bring a couple of their Special Navy landing force back up from the islands down here. And they have a few units down here, but that's it, right? Like they just don't have factory capacity. They've only got 1 factory on the mainland now. Over here, I think that if I play them again, I think what will have to happen is they'll need more small factories over there than what I put on. Just having 2 small factories and putting 2 units on. And then, like it was okay the way I started, where you got the Marines and you're coming in on the land and everything. But for the long game, for the rest of the game, rather than having to keep transporting units over, because those transports need to be used to keep going further down into the islands and over to Calcutta. So you need factories up here to maintain what you have, I think. Anyway, Calcutta looks pretty secure. I say that, but I thought the Americans were looking good too. But They actually, like, there's a big happening that happened in the Mediterranean too. So they brought some boats over here, and dropped a couple of tanks and a dude off here. And then they were able to build a couple of tanks as well. They've got more money now than they did before because of that that roll they get every turn. They got the wartime economy technology. So they're able to get a little bit more money, as are Anzac. Anzac, all they did was they bought a couple of submarines. It's not a good idea for these guys to come down because they've got no destroyers. So they've got no cannon fodder, right? All they've got there is capital ships and planes, and they'll be losing those if they come down here. Like, for one thing, the subs aren't going to shoot at planes, right? So these subs will be going after that cruiser. They'll be going after capital ships, and 3 of those capital ships are already damaged. So they figured if they just put the subs in the water and bring the fighters down where there's an air base here, and they can scramble, then it's just not worth it for the Japanese to come down here and get them. And with no transports in the water, they don't have to worry about the land on this turn anyway. They're going to have to think about that coming up, though, because they don't have the Americans to fall back on. So in the Mediterranean there, after the British seen what happened to the Americans, they said, you know what, fuck you. They went after Italy and took them out. I guess the Italians, you know what, I wasn't thinking straight on that one either. It's hard when you're playing so many nations, right? If I was just playing one, then I'd be thinking about these things more. But these boats should have been in with the other ones. Like, they didn't even bother scrambling their 3 fighters, because once I set it down on the board there, on the battle board, it just, you know, it did not look good. With these ones in here, then I think I probably would have scrambled the planes, but I had them in 2 different zones there, so the British were able to take them out, and they had lots of planes. Like, they've got these planes back here, and like I said a little bit earlier, there these jet fighters are just devastating. They roll at 8. They just wipe out everything. It's like rolling with battleships, right? And so, but the Italian coast, the Italian mainland, I don't think they're going to lose their capital, because they've got the bunker here, and they've got coastal gun, and they've got units all up and down there. Plus they have units over here as well, right? They still got these things. So there's no transports down here for anybody, except for, I guess, there's the one French transport. So they might not even lose these things. So they're looking at getting some victory points as well. Again, nothing happened in Spain. And nothing happened down here. The French, they actually look pretty strong up here, don't they? Anyway, I was... it's kind of a shame that France can't even attack this, you know what I mean? They can't even walk into there. Like, what that would make the Vichy not a neutral nation anymore. It would make it German. So Germany would get these boats, right? So that's why I haven't taken Morocco. But it does seem kind of silly that the French wouldn't even take back their own colony like that. Oh well, you know, like, that's the way it is, right? But, you know, I could see not allowing Britain to do it, or not allowing the Americans to take it out. But the French should be able to take their own spot back, I think. It just says allies. The allies can't attack, and of course France is part of the allies, right? So I'll just show you what this looks like from down here. I'll move this around a bit and you can take a look. The game is getting pretty late in the game here. So what do we got here? Yeah, it's only 3 more turns. I've been playing all day. It's dinner time. I'm still in my pajamas and bare feet. I got up and made coffee and started playing. I got on the phone for a while. Took a couple of breaks. Yeah, so that's what she looks like. It's been a pretty damn good game. I will, at the end of the game, I will give you an analysis of what I think of the game and what I think of this particular game that I played as well. So anyway, that's it. There's nothing more to show you here. So we're headed to July of 1944. Okay, so that's the end of 1944, and you take a look at these French guys here. They're just partying up a storm down here. They're so excited they just can't believe it, because I set them up like that too. I told you I like to play with little plastic army men. Yeah, so I set them all up and I said, watch this, and so they were all looking across the water there, and the Americans came in and they took out Vichy France. So what happened then was, from what I understand of the rules, is that all the Vichy territories surrendered. So I just took all the Free French and the Vichy French roundels off. There didn't seem to be much of a point in leaving any roundels on. Why do you need the Free French roundels if there's only one France now, right? So and another thing that I did, I didn't take the capital. Like I was looking through the rules and thinking, you know, like if I take the capital, then that'll be it for the Vichy. But that didn't seem to me what it was saying. So I had to actually take out Vichy France in order for that to happen. And so I didn't bother taking out Paris because I kind of figured that, like, with so many Germans still on there, if I took out that, then the Germans would just come back and hit them in Paris and take their money again, right? There was a couple of units on there. There was a heavy artillery and there was a dude on there. But what the Americans did is they came in with a medium bomber, a fighter, and a tactical bomber, and they took out the units that were in Paris, and then they had to land here. The tactical and the fighter had to land down here, and the medium bomber landed back on London there. So anyway, the Americans can take them next time or something, right? The British are going to be able to put some more things on there. There's 2 more turns left, and so these guys here will be able to come on for the Americans. There's 4 units there, and then there's 6 units back there with 3 transports. Those guys will also be able to hit the. That'll be the last thing that happens in the game. Is those guys will land somewhere in Europe, right? And see what they can do, and then that'll be the end of the game basically. But one thing that needs to happen, and I thought I'd do this on camera, is now you have to roll for these boats. Remember I rolled for these boats earlier and fucked that up? Well, let's try not to do that again. So what happens is you roll the dice, and for a 1 to 6 it becomes Free French again. For 7 to 10 it gets scuttled, so it sinks. And for 11 or 12 then they become German. So let's go for the battleship first. It is a 5, so it's a French battleship. So let's just move him over to the French port here. Okay, so we'll go for the cruiser. A 3, another Free French boat. So now we got the destroyer, a 10. So that is scuttled, so the destroyer is dead. Alrighty then. So French actually have a navy. Look at that. Now they're even happier. Woohoo! We got a battleship. Okay, so let's just go over to the other side of the board there, and start where we usually start. I wanted to show you that first because it was pretty exciting for the French there. I know you're pretty excited too, aren't you? Yeah. Okay, so set that down. Okay, so I showed you that, right? So and then the Americans came here. The British landed here, in Picardia. So they have almost all of France now. There's just this territory here. What is that? Lorraine and Paris. So and there's only one heavy tank, one German heavy tank on Lorraine, and that's it. But of course they got all these other units back here, right? So we'll see what they decide to do. One thing that they probably won't do is get themselves to the coast, because that leaves them open to all those shots from battleships, right? The other thing that the Allies are doing is carpet bombing the shit out of them. So the British bomber comes in and drops his load, and then this guy comes in and blows his wad all over him. And he's a heavy bomber, so you know they're just dropping bombs everywhere. And this guy here, the rocket, those aren't all that effective. It's only $2 they took off them. You roll 1d6 against the other guy's factory. That's not a weapon that I'll probably develop again. And it's only a range of 2, so it has to be on the coast there. Like that, I know it doesn't look like it's on the coast, but that's because I couldn't fit any more in there. So another development here was that the Russians came down and they're making their way into Turkey now. So and there's not much in here anymore, right? So the Germans might be able to hold out there, like they've got that factory, so they can put another unit on. So, and there's only 2 turns left, so I doubt that the Russians are going to be able to take that. But they did make some progress in there, and they can probably take out Iraq. Either that or the British can take Iraq there from the Germans. Not much happened in here. They were fighting over this space here, and I think over this space as well. Just little skirmishes, right? Because neither side has a whole lot to fight with. Everything is like it looks like they do, but they're all spread out, right? Like these guys can't attack over here, you know, and these guys can't attack over here. So it's one little fight here, one little fight there, and that's the way it's been going for the last couple turns. There's no big stacks anywhere. And over here, the Japanese managed to get their factory back, and what they did and what they should have done a long time ago, and live and learn, right? But they're building a factory for right here, and they're building another one here. There was one before, and they're building a factory down here in Hong Kong. So that'll give them 5 factories on the mainland. That's what I should have done in the first place, was built 4 or 5 factories, because all I had was 2, and so I was only placing 2 units on the mainland, and I was using all Marines and Special Navy Landing Force, which are a little more expensive, but they had to come across the water and they had to attack somebody, and you know, with the amphibious assault rules, you kind of need Marines, right? But the Russians, like, they won't be able to break into Russia, I don't think. Like, the Russians got a plane here, and they've got all their militia, and they've still got these units here. So the Japanese aren't going to be able to do much damage to them. The Japanese are one more turn, and they'll be able to put those 2 boats on. The Americans are just building small boats, destroyers and subs. They moved a couple of subs up over here, just to mess with the Japanese. The Japanese, though, like they need to get this task force back to a shipyard so they can repair their 3 battleships. That's one thing, you know, like when you're getting so far away from your capital, or from anywhere where you have a shipyard, you got to think about that. Maybe you don't want to take that hit on the battleship, right? Maybe you want to take that hit on something else, so you don't have to go all the way home to repair your battleship. Because it's not just that it's more vulnerable with only 1 hit left, it's also less effective. It rolls less, right? Instead of rolling an 8, you roll a 7 on those. And so not much has happened down here for the Japanese. They're basically just leaving, right? With the Anzac, they finally left the island. They're going to spam the South Pacific with subs, but that's all they can do, right? And they put a couple more subs on. That's all they can do. Like, if you wanted to buy a battleship for these guys, first you'd have to upgrade your factory to a major factory. That takes 2 turns. Then you'd have to upgrade your shipyard or naval base to a shipyard. Then you would have to take 4 turns to build a battleship, and for the price of all those things, that's about how much money Anzac gets every turn. So it's going to take you, what, 6, 8, 9 turns, half the game, to build 1 battleship. And then you got to remember, in all that time, in half the game, you didn't put anything on, right? Except for 2 facilities that are vulnerable. So it really isn't in the cards for you to be building any capital ships down here. There's not that bonus income that you can get. At least there wasn't in this game. Like, there would be 10 IPPs available to you if the Germans had attacked the Netherlands. Then there would have been $10 that they could have had if the Japanese hadn't come down and taken it out on the very same turn. So you could have gotten some income there, but really, I mean, with Anzac, I don't ever see Anzac doing much. So if you're thinking about getting into this game, you're thinking, geez, I better buy some more battleships for Anzac. Don't. Don't buy any battleships. Don't buy any aircraft carriers. Whatever you got is going to be good enough. You'd be lucky if you ever use one. Look at the FEC though. When I started the game, they were only getting, what, $4 a turn? I never thought they'd get this powerful. But with the Russians and the Americans, like, that did do something. You know, like, they lost their fleet and everything. But what it did was it took the Japanese away from everybody, right? And so it allowed these guys to grow, it allowed these guys to grow, and it allowed those guys to grow. So even though the Americans lost that whole fleet there, it did do something. So you look at these guys, they actually have 7 medium tanks now. There's one down here in Malay, they just took Malay back. And they got 6 up here, you know, and they got a jet fighter. I never would have thought that would be possible earlier in the game. But that, like, I was shucking troops over with these boats here, right? I think I brought over at least 6 units that I brought over on those 2 transports there. 4 of them were tanks. So that's how they were able to grow so much, right? And then their income was a little more, and they've only got a capacity of 2 with their factory. So I was buying, I couldn't put boats in the water, they would have got sunk. I was buying tanks for them, you know, just to spend all their money. I didn't want to be holding a bunch of money and then have the Japanese come along and take it. So now these boats have moved back, and those guys will be good till the end of the game. So what these guys can do now, I bought a couple of Marines here, and they can either go after Turkey, or they could go after Yugoslavia or Greece, or they could go after Italy. Italy actually built their first jet fighter. That was the weapon, the free weapon that they rolled earlier in the game when everybody got to roll for a weapon. So, but Italy is looking pretty damn strong. Like, I think that the strategy that I used with them, just piling stuff on and piling stuff on, and making sure that there was lots of planes and everything, was going to save them. You could have played it differently as the British player or something, like bought a lot of transports, but really, I mean, the way the game was played, Italy was never in any danger. Their boats were in danger of getting taken out, and they were handily. Like the British just took the other 4 boats here. They should have had them all together, but then they would have lost their air force, and then you never know, the land could have been vulnerable. But anyway, I think those 2 British transports are going to try something. They might as well, with 2 turns left in the game, they might as well try to take out Yugoslavia or Greece or Turkey. I think those would be the most likely candidates. And I think I've been everywhere here. This would still be the French capital, I guess, because they didn't take Paris. And Africa has been in the hands of the Allies for a while now. And the factories, did I mention that? The British increased their factories because this turn here, they were only able to put 4 units on. They've got 4 transports, but then, you know, when it came to putting units on, oh geez, I'm gonna need more factories, so I had to build a couple more. I got a major and a minor extra there now, so they can build 7 units, and so they will hit the coast twice, and the Americans will hit the coast twice, and we'll see what happens with that, right? And that'll be the end of the game because there's only 2 more turns left. So anyway, that's the way it looks here in Prince George. I think that's it for today. I played 3 rounds. That's a long time, boy. It's 8:30 at night and I'm still in my pajamas. I had nowhere to go. It's a good thing I had lots of food in the house. Anyway, going to January 1945. We'll finish her off tomorrow, hopefully. Okay, last day of filming for this video. And it's a good thing for the Germans too, because they're on life support now. Things are not looking good for them at all. So they took their turn, and They were able to take back Picardia, and they had a pretty sizable force there. Here, let me just move you over there and take a look. So here's Picardia down in here. They had a heavy tank and 2 medium tanks and an SS Panzer Grenadier and an artillery. And the British didn't have much to go in there. And the Americans couldn't reach it. But they really wanted to take them out, because if they could take them out, then they could liberate Paris. They didn't want to liberate Paris and then have the Germans come down and take it back, right? So the British sacrificed planes. They sacrificed, what is it, a fighter and a tactical bomber in there. Plus they had to sacrifice when they took northern Italy. I'll tell you about that when we get down there. But anyway, the Germans held on here, but they held the territory, but they were able to take out the heavy tank on the last round, and the heavy tank hit the medium tank, and it was able to save the jet fighter. So there's not much left for Germany on this side here. As you can see, Paris has fallen. The American elite Marines and the artillery came in. There was only one dude in there, and there was nobody on Lorraine, so they moved up here as well. They were able to do that. Oh, let's just move these guys over here. Look at that, there were French troops on the mainland again. They were able to do that because like the Italians had a pretty sizable force. They could have come in from northern Italy here, right? They had a bunch of dudes, and they had 3 mechanized infantry they could have used. They had 3 fighters there, plus these other 2 planes here. That guy I was moving stuff around in there. But then the British, remember those 2 transports that were way down there? They took their 2 transports and the Marines, and they came up and they assaulted here. So they sacrificed a plane doing that as well, so they could take it out. Oops. And I've got flying naval ports here. So they were able to take this out, and then the Italians came and took it back. But because they took it out, then these guys weren't able to go after the Americans. They probably even could have taken the Americans out. They had quite a bit of stuff. This is supposed to be up here. The artillery came in here as well. But yeah, so like they're probably going to lose that again, right? Even the French can take them back if they want. But anyway, that's the way it looks over here. And when we move over to the Eastern Front, it's not looking good for them over here either. Like, they still got some territory, right? But there's not much left, right? They couldn't afford to put many units over here, so they got a tank, they got 4 dudes, and they got an SS Panzer Grenadier. This plane is just a transport plane, so it's not going to help out at all. They've still got their troops down there in Turkey, but there are a couple of tanks down there, and one of these Katyusha rocket trucks are headed down there as well. So like, they could hold out till the end of this game, but I mean, you know that if the game was to keep going, like if you were to keep playing the game, that Turkey would not last. Neither would the Eastern Front. There's only 1 turn left here, so the Germans, they can't really do any attacks here. I suppose this guy could take this spot here, and that's about it, right? Like, they might be able to take this back if they wanted to, and that's, you know, in fact, that's all they could do, really. But really what they should be doing is heading back with these tanks, though, instead of moving this way. Because there's still another landing left with the Royal Marines there, and then you see there's a bunch of elite Marines and tanks back there for the Americans. They're about to land. So yeah, the Germans are in a world of hurt over here, and the Russians are doing pretty well. You know, like they've got heavy tank and mechanized here. They've got mechanized and the rocket truck and medium tanks. They got heavy tanks and a tank here, tank there, 2 tanks down there. Like, they went heavy on the armor because they were limited in factory space. They had lots of money and they could only place, I think, 11 units or something like that. So, you know, they couldn't buy a shit ton of dudes, right? I mean, they could have bought a lot of militia, but they would have rather had tanks. If they were on the defense, then they would have bought more militia, but they didn't need the number of units. They're getting their butts kicked over here now, though. The Japanese decided to get serious about this over here. So the Japanese will probably be able to take out Vladivostok there before the end of the game. And they could probably take back their original territories as well. So it looks like the Japanese will be up one territory by the end of this game on this side. Yeah, they're doing pretty good. They got the 5 factories on the mainland over here, and they finally got their battleships back, and they'll repair those on this turn. But yeah, they look like there's nothing anybody's going to be able to do in this game, right? Like if the Americans had 5 more turns, then maybe, right? But even then, it would be tough because they've got so many boats and lots of money still, right? But you look at the Americans over here, they decided, okay, well, let's start buying strategic bombers, heavy strategic bombers. You know, maybe we could bomb the shit out of them or something, right? So that's what, but you know, like they did that even though they know that they're not even going to get to use them because there's only 1 turn left, but what else were they going to buy, right? So they put those on there, and one thing that happened here, the Anzac player caught the Japanese player sleeping here. They were so busy getting the mainland secured and doing all that and everything. These 2 Anzac subs came up, and they took out a carrier. You can see the planes landed on the mainland here, but they took out the carrier and a transport in there. So, I think Anzac's in a world of hurt now. The Japanese are going to be pissed off about that. So they bought a couple more subs here, and they moved their other subs up. This is where those 2 subs came from, was from here and here. So they've replaced those, and they put 2 more on down here. I've actually run out of subs for them now, so note to self, I need more Anzac subs if I ever play the sub spam game again with them. Now I made sure that there is 3 transports down here for the Japanese, and they could hit Calcutta, and there's lots of Marines down here. So I made sure to stack up Calcutta because the Japanese have only got 1 shot at it, and there's no way they could get in there. I think there's 20 units on here, including 5 tanks and a jet fighter. So there's just no way that the Calcutta is going to fall in this game. Couple more turns maybe, but just not in this game. But besides that, they're also moving in, right? And actually there's supposed to be another, here, let me just grab one. I keep forgetting to put the guy on over there. There we go, we'll just go like that. So yeah, Calcutta is going to be secure for this game. Japan is secure for this game. There's no way that anybody's taking them out. I suppose these guys could come down here and land on Australia if they wanted to. They couldn't take the capital out. They're too far away for the capital because it's down on the bottom side down over here. They could do it in a couple of turns, but they couldn't do it in this game because there's only 1 turn left. So the British here, they put down another Marine, and they've got a tank. And there's another dude in there they could use too. So they still got those 2 transports, and the Mediterranean is not cut up into 1,000,000 zones in this game. So they could come down 1, 2. Oh, they're not at a port. Yeah, I thought they were. I was thinking they were here so they could come down and go back up again. Okay, I guess they can't use those. I thought that maybe they could bring their transports down and bring those back up over here, but I guess they can't, not in this game anyway. I don't think that Rome is going to fall in this game. Obviously not without those transports being able to be used before the end of the game. But Rome is pretty secure, so that capital is not going to fall. It looks like everybody's going to have their capital at the end of this game. Moscow's not going to fall. Germany's not going to fall. I mean, it would probably be the first to fall, either that or Calcutta, if both sides made a concentrated effort to go for those capitals. But with Paris being back in French hands now, everybody has their capital except for China, but China's a minor power. I'm talking about the major powers here. One of the things that I'm finding with the Americans is that it's difficult to do some kind of transport check. Like, what you really need is a naval base here on the Azores. So, but it kind of sucks that you have to you'd have to attack Portugal, like declare war on Portugal, just to get that get that space and get a naval base there. Because from here, transports are one of only just transports, coastal subs and torpedo boat destroyers are the only ships that don't go 3 spaces. So if you don't have a naval space here, they can only go 2, which means that the only place they can make it to is this spot right here, where the task force marker is. And from there, you can only drop your units on Normandy or on Bordeaux here. Like, there's no way you can make it up the coast there. So that kind of sucks. Like, it would take you a couple of turns to get over there. You'd have to go 1 and then 2 and then hit the mainland. And I suppose you could do that. You could get that much of a shot going. But with the Americans starting as late as they did, it's difficult to do that, right? But yeah, if you had a naval base there, then it would be a lot better. Although it would take you can't use your allies' naval bases, so you wouldn't be able to get yourself back to this spot if you went 3 away. So again, you're kind of screwed there, right? What would be nice is if you could take this space out right here. I suppose that's something I can look at down the road. I'll look at the rules, see if you can take out this spot here, because there's a naval base here, there's an air base here. I think they can reach that. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, like they could get themselves to here, right? And that they could own this naval base and an air base, and that could be where they start from. But this game, there obviously wasn't a way to do that, right? So anyway, we got 1 turn left. Looks like everybody's going to keep their capital this game. And where are we here? You see we got the French roundel back on the board instead of this one here. The French saved some of their money too. They only bought that 1 militia down there because they had a space to put a militia on. Just to secure it a little better, if in case the Italians were able to attack that space there, and it looks like they could too, because the British thought they were going to come up with those boats, but they can't. So if the Americans, or if the transports move 3, they could, but they can't. So we are going to the last turn. And we'll finish this game off for you. And that is the game, my very first game. I'm going to do this video, and I didn't add up the points. I thought I'd do that afterwards. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go and I'm going to show you what happened here. Then I'm going to upload this video, and then I'm going to make 1 more. It won't be as long as these ones, of course, the last 3. What I want to do is I want to add up the points. And like I honestly have no idea who won here, so I'll tell you what I think about the game, and then we'll add up the points and find out who actually won. Plus, I want to give my thoughts on the game, this game in particular, and also the game Global War 1936 to 1945. So that'll be the next video, but let's just finish this video off first. So you can see how far the Russians got. They were pushing back, and they managed to get to Warsaw. They did get 1 German territory over here. I think that would have been a victory objective, but I think you have to have all of your own territories, and they did lose Kamchatka on the last thing that the Japanese did. So they didn't like the tank. Actually, he couldn't come back up, could he? That would have been a blitz. Can't blitz from a mountain. Okay, so the tank went down there and he got Iraq. They were able to take the territories here. They would have liked to have pushed further, but they couldn't do it. This one tank had to hit here and blitz to here. And all that was there was a dude, so it wasn't a problem. It was just this guy and a plane against that dude in there. What else? Okay, this is where the big changes are, of course. So Paris is back in French hands. The French actually, they saved some money last time. They knew they were getting their capital back, so they didn't buy anything, I don't think, because they were waiting until they got their capital, and then they were going to put some stuff on. And they put a couple of dudes in a tank on. Plus they brought these ones over last turn on that transport down there. So yeah, they've got all of their original territories back, thanks to the Americans and the British. You can see the Americans and British managed to take back everything on the Western Front except for anything in Germany. Like one more turn and that's where they would have been going, is into Germany, right? But I don't know that I would have done this the same way though. Like the American ship came over here and took 2 territories. Like the dudes were able to attack this territory, and the ship came over and attacked this territory. But that takes them out of position for going back and getting more units, right? Like that brings their transports further away. But they've got lots of transports in behind. They've still got 4 transports back there. They've got lots of tanks and elite Marines. They got Marines and elite Marines in the middle of the ocean there at the Azores. In Germany, they've got lots of units in there, but it's only a matter of time. So let's just walk down this way here. So yeah, Japan took back all of their original territories over here. They managed to get it all back. Oh, these guys gotta fly back here, sorry. They they lost another cruiser. These those New Zealand subs. You think they would have learned their lesson? But anyway, Russia didn't want to lose that. They put up a good fight there. It actually lasted like 3 rounds, I think. And they do have some stuff back here. But they had that big push going on to Germany there. So I mean, like you could say Russia did well in that the Japanese never made any headway. You know, they managed to take 1 territory, but that's it, right? And when you consider that the Americans never did make it over here, so for Russia to be have only lost 1 territory, and Calcutta over there, oof, I don't know what those are doing there. And for Calcutta to be as strong as it is, that's pretty good. Partly weak Japanese play, and partly, you know, good play on the behalf of the Russians, and the Commonwealth and the Americans. Like the Americans, all they really did was put a huge navy down here and dared Japan to come and get it, which they did, and they lost a lot of boats. I actually had to buy a bunch of destroyers with all those submarines down there. The Japanese didn't have any destroyers left. So, like they lost 1 of them in the last turn there. So they had to buy three destroyers. And they did an amphibious assault up there. That's why their battleships are all up there. The Americans moved up to Hawaii, and now they've got 4 heavy bombers over here in the Pacific. So, you know, it's a good thing for everybody that they're not allowed to bomb ships with those. At least I don't think they are. I think you're just carpet bombing the land. But yeah, if those were, if they were like Axis and Allies, then that would be pretty devastating to have those in the Pacific. The Americans didn't develop any technology. They didn't enter the war until 1943, and they looked at the board and they thought, you know what, by the time we get anything developed, like even if they were to roll the same type of weapon over and over and over again, they get it just in time for the game to end. So they just didn't even bother. If they could have entered the war a year earlier, then sure, you know, use a lot of money and develop weapons. Anzac, they finally got to attack somebody. They took also a cruiser and a transport there. The transport and cruiser stayed down here to take this place here from the British. And everybody else was up there fighting over Kamchatka and other things. I think they had to take those 2 Anzac submarines out. So with everybody gone now, Anzac came over here and they took that out. And you know, like if the game was to go on, I think Japan could come down here and take it back and take those boats out. But then again, lots of Anzac subs in the water. They're just like mosquitoes, right? Just a little bite here, a little bite there, you know. But Anzac, you see how well they've done here. They've got lots of land troops. You know, not enough to withstand a huge invasion, but you know, considering they hardly get any money, they didn't do too bad. But of course, this is the first time they attacked anything, so for what it's worth, all right. Over here, the British, actually what they did, they realized they had 3 infantry over here on Gibraltar. So they were able to come down here, 1 space, pick them up, 2 space into here, and attack Yugoslavia. And they managed to take that out. They had lots of planes, right? So that's why even with just 3 dudes, they're able to amphibiously assault somebody. And there were only 2 units on there, and they both missed. So, like if they both would have hit, then that would have been it for the British. But I guess they could have lost. Took 1 hit on the dudes and 1 hit on a plane. Excuse me, just to take out Yugoslavia. Anyway, Africa is completely secure. There's no Axis units anywhere down there. Spain, I haven't touched Spain in the longest time. Didn't roll for anything. Didn't do anything. I'll be sure next time to put some more effort into Spain. I just, you know, when you're trying to learn the game, it's tough to. It's like a little distraction. I think that it would be a great little distraction if you already knew how to play the game, right? It'd be like this little side battle going on over on the side here, and that would be cool. And it was cool to in the beginning for me, but then once everybody got going and everybody was, you know, major battles here, there, and everywhere, then I kind of just lost interest in it. And after a couple of turns, I thought, oh, geez, I forgot about Spa, screw it. You know, you can see the big navies up there, the American Navy and the British Navy. That's not the only American British navies, of course. There's the one in Hawaii and the one just outside of Italy. Italy managed to keep all of its original territories, plus they had Greece. So they had all of the original and Greece. Nobody was able to take Germany out of here. If the game had lasted longer, then obviously the Russians could have. But they didn't even try because they knew, you know, you calculate how much time is left and in how many turns it would take you to get here, and it just didn't make sense. It made more sense just to take the Eastern Front up there because they did have enough time to do that. So there was no sense in putting a whole bunch of units down here. If they had more time, if there was another 2 years left or 3 turns left or something, absolutely they would have had a bunch of units down here and they would have been moving on them. I think that's about it for me to show you. So I'm going to go and upload this, and then I will come back, and I got to take a break, and I got something I got to do, and then I'm going to make another video talking about the game, about the wider game, what I think of it and everything. So I'm going to take a quick look over here. I think, yeah, these are probably accurate, fairly accurate. So that's what it looks like on the board over here. It could be, you know, especially on the last turn, I might have forgot to move them or stuff. And that's what the weapons look like over there. They haven't moved in a couple of turns. I guess the Americans could have kept going on the jet aircraft, but you know, then even to get some jet aircraft somewhere where it would have done them some good, then you know it would have the game would have been over. So that's what it looks like from here. Thank you for joining me for this game, and I will be back to analyze it all for you and to count the score. Oh, wait a minute. Before I leave, ask yourself, who do you think won the game? I'm going to post this, and then now that you've seen the whole board, who do you think won this game? Do you think it was the Russians? Do you think it was the Allies? Do you think it was the Axis? Like the Axis, the Japanese were doing very well. And Germany, you know, they hadn't lost any German territories. The Italians hadn't lost any Italian territories, and they did have one extra. Like the Russians are on their way. Like the Germans are definitely going to get the shit kicked out of them there, but they haven't got it kicked out of them yet, right? They still got all of their original territories. Oh, except for that one up there in the North Sea. What is that one? East Prussia. That's the only territory they've lost. So who do you think won? I think it's between the Russians and the Allies myself. I'm going to call it for the Allies, but we'll see. We'll see once it's all added up. So, thanks for joining me. Take care, everyone. General Hand Grenade out.